Welcome, everyone. This is Dr. Thor. Get ready for Gnosis. Well, this is part 2 of the master class in manifesting sciences. And we ended in the last talk going into the other major influencer in manifesting machines. You got to remember, these weren't manifesting machines. Basically, manifesting non-medical issues really didn't happen until the 1970s, until I started actually selling machines as manifesting machines. So very few people were using them for anything other. The Albert Abrams was a doctor. Ruth Drown was a chiropractor who eventually settled in Los Angeles and opened up her chiropractic practice there. She did have a license in chiropractor, and she opened up a practice there with the full intentions of using that as a radionic treatment place, and she coined the term radionics. Now, radionics started to be used as soon as radios were being used. It's kind of a cute little term. She grabbed that because she thought there were radio waves coming from these machines. But of course, if there were, you could detect them. But of course, there weren't. There is no energy that comes from a radionic machine that is in any way electromagnetic in nature. There's a very minor scalar field produced from radionic, a non-electromagnetic field produced by radionic machines that is basically coming from the user who is projecting energy into the machine. These are intention machines. These are thought form machines. They're psychic tuners. Nothing else is happening there. There's a very minor scalar field that's created through the setup of two plates and potentiometers with some wires there. This causes a small amount of energy to be produced through the psychic process, but it's so tiny that it is virtually worthless. But again, let's go back to Ruth Drown for a minute, and then we'll get back to this. So she really had no background whatsoever except being trained by her father in photography. When she moved to Los Angeles, she got a job working, I believe, was it for the electric company, Edison, or someone else, I'm not sure. But she then was helping with their automatic billing systems. They had a machine for that. And she learned how to work on that machine. That's just a pseudo computer, something a regular physical machine. It has absolutely nothing to do with the field of radionics or anything to do near what Abrams was doing that she got involved in. And the reason why this field is also, as the field in modern times of Orgone has taken off, is because it requires virtually no skill to make any of these things. And of course, like most things, the people getting involved in most areas, no matter what it is, the people getting involved with it know nothing. And they make up a bunch of stories, and then, of course, criminals come in and give their reviews of how wonderful it is so they can sell all this garbage that is nothing more than psychic tuners. But we've got to remember that visualization and psychic focus is much more powerful than people think. Just like the placebo effect. Now, the placebo effect is extremely powerful. And generally, 80 to 90%, I'm giving it that much higher now, after even further research, are involved in the placebo effect. Now, the placebo effect usually lasts anywhere from 90 days to a little bit more. After that, people finally give up on it and don't give credit to whatever items they're using. But the focusing of energy, telling yourself this works, getting your entire consciousness to work on something can be very effective. It also has a huge failure rate. So it's like anything else in life. What works for you individually is ultimately what matters. So most of the machines built today are all based on Ruth Drown's. And what happened to Ruth Drown? Let's give her a story here. She has a lot of interesting instruments. I like some of her philosophies, the technology she built, all very interesting, but very ineffective in general. And she was not really able to do anything. As a matter of fact, she was tested twice to the fact that and she failed horribly. In 1950, she was tested again, not by some board of people trying to hang her, but by people trying to prove what she had, by the University of Chicago. and failed so horribly that it's frightening. Drown claimed that she could stop bleeding, and they cut 2 dogs, and those dogs died because she couldn't do it. She couldn't prove a single thing that she stated she could do. Plain and simple. So this is fairly frightening that someone would be that delusional to do that. But after that, she refused to be tested. Well, obviously. If she had kick-ass technology, she could prove all of her claims, and she couldn't. And there was no rigging going on. She couldn't do the job. So then what happened is the County of Los Angeles, after many complaints about her claims and everything else, investigated her, and she was sent samples of blood or whatever, and she totally and completely misdiagnosed it and pulled the old cold reading trick that we hear about that magicians do. Citing many different problems that you possibly may have, and that way covering wide areas without pinning down anything. I've had this done by other alternative people to me as well, and of course I've had this done by actual magicians that think that this works as well. It doesn't really, because in the end it is, you're conning yourself if you want to equate a general statement to something in your life. General statements mean nothing. Give me specifics. So the whole idea is I did this with a medical dowsing woman, and she gave me 500 things that was, of course, you give somebody so much information that some of it's got to be true, and how do you prove any of it? And the bottom line is, what's the main cause? If you tell somebody there's 50 things in their life to work on, well, it's so overwhelming you don't know where to start. And if you give credit to that, well, you're a fool. Well, there's no credit to that. It's nonsense. And people involved in it are nonsense. But that's the way of the world. I don't know if these people, I don't believe these people are direct con artists, but it gets to a point where their delusional thinking is very detrimental to you and whatever they're doing. So she was proved that all of her stuff that she did was wrong. She was working with her daughter and another secretary. She invested tens of thousands of dollars in having machines built and had a whole little school going and everything else in Los Angeles. Certainly fascinating, and certainly if I go back in time, that certainly would be a place that I would like to drop into and find out what was going on. So she put together quite an operation. And this may have frightened the local medical people as well. They always are frightened because we all know that doctors, not only are they horribly corrupt and evil, they are always afraid. They know what they're doing is bogus, so they don't want anybody coming in with anything different. But the fact is, they caught her red-handed, having totally and complete misdiagnosis, which she wasn't really supposed to do anyway. She's not a medical doctor. She was a chiropractor. So I believe it was 3 or 4 days before trial, she got numerous strokes. I believe it was 3 strokes, and the last one finally killed her. At 72 or 3, and I always forget the exact, but it's unimportant. It was at a very young age. Remember, life expectancy in the United States has always been around 78 to 80. And then you're talking average. This is the hillbilly who's living on tar and liver. So the whole idea is that you're talking about across the board. Life expectancy today is at least 85 to 90 in general. Bottom line is that she died young, and certainly her technology didn't stop her from getting strokes. Certainly something she should have been able to analyze and figure out that was her problem. So she never made it to court and never was able to really put in good arguments, which would have been fascinating to find out what her defense was. But her daughter, who was working with her, got convicted. I believe she got 3 years in prison. And the secretary was convicted, and the secretary got, I think, on probation for 6 months or something. So, I mean, that's the story of her. Before that, though, there was a transfer of technologies, as happens pretty much all the time now, from the U.S. and her over to England. And she taught, I don't know if she taught directly or not. It's so difficult to get information out there because nobody's done their job over there. I mean, you've got the UK where radionics has been legal since the 1940s, has done absolutely nothing. No history on radionics, no history on all the many practitioners. They're a low-life scum group that has cheated me in different areas for a long time. They do nothing. Their radionic school, you have to go there. You got to spend 3 years in England to learn. They're backwards, poorly put together. They have some of the worst machines ever produced by a person that knows nothing. They put their machines in a plexiglass plastic case. I mean, this is the lowest level you can possibly see. You want to see those machines? You want to see the rest of the machines? Guess who has them, baby? They're all on my website here, on my channel here, for free. And you can get my commentaries on that, the only expert in this field. Remember that, I'm the only expert in this field. So it's very important for everyone to understand that. So she went over there and basically, without going into a lot of boring details here, is the fact that George Delaware picked up her machine and made machines just exactly like hers and did this for many years. Virtually no changes, virtually no improvements, virtually nothing. So the whole idea is that these machines then were copied by everybody else, particularly Bruce Copen, who claims to, hasn't claims, for many, many years. He was a good marketer. He built very complicated, well-built machines and sold them for tens of thousands of dollars and apparently made quite a bit of money. So the whole idea, and probably is the most successful radionic person ever, selling many, many machines. I think they claim 70,000 machines have been sold in the last 60, 70 years, which isn't a lot, but it's certainly enough. Other people picked it up, and of course, because of the fact of its popularity and legality in Britain, many other people got involved in it. Of course, Bruce Copeland, guess what? He died young. Died in his middle to late 60s, like all these radionic practitioners, because they're using faulty machines that kick back energies to them. That's a whole nother issue, and very few people talk about that because they're all corrupt. What's new? So, the side effects or the possible deadly consequences of using traditional radionic equipment is pretty profound, but you're not going to hear that from the practitioners out there. So the whole idea, and that particularly those selling stuff, because after all, they don't care if you die. Matter of fact, machines, as I've mentioned, Orgone was designed to kill you. So the whole idea is that the reality of all that so Delaware did that for many, many years with some fairly decent success. He was taken to court and persecuted and prosecuted, and we don't really know the facts and figures of all of this. The gossip is that he cured the judge's wife of a particular malady and got off on that, on his charge. He was brought to court by an individual who bought his technology, and it did nothing. And he also finalized in a legal sworn-to testament that these machines are psychic-based machines, and he stated this clearly. There's no electronic process going on here. It's your consciousness, and it's a psychic tool. It's an intention. What's your intention? And by turning dials and focusing on the intention and focusing on the target, you actually can make change. And this is true. Plain and simple. And this has been done by people throughout the world, and certain researchers even today who have done this without any machines at all, just by focusing on people and sending them energy. And been doing it for 30 years with, he claims, and I'm not really sure how true it is, that he gets amazing success. But he is in the scientific community and has documented these changes. He's done animal tests. He's followed what is considered scientific dogma to the letter, and has proven that his form of visualizations, it's a type of speed visualization, the way to describe it, and was able to radically change people, particularly diseases, including the big C. So the whole idea is that all of that is part of the process. So to think that this is that your thought forms, your consciousness, your higher consciousness ability is limited is nonsense. And so it's completely the opposite. And the entire universe is designed to take in higher energetic consciousness and make physical matter out of it. That's how the universe works. Check my lectures on that to fully understand that. So what we ran into here is that Delaware did that. There really was nobody in the UK, even at that time, for him to take over his work. He sent all of his research papers and all of his machines he had to Christopher Hills, another Brit who was heavily involved in this and who was very popular at the time. That I don't know what happened to Delaware and what he died of, but he died of young as well. They all died in their late 60s. To Christopher Hills and his organization, and that equipment has, and research reports, has all been put somewhere, disappeared, for all we know, thrown in the trash after Hills's death, who again died young from a virus, and none of the tech he had and all the stuff he said were amazing healers couldn't save his own life. And this is so typical of all these people that have no morality and have no concept of what they're really doing and refuse to test things properly. We have a modern author who is touting and even reprinting Ruth Drown's books, which proved that how stupid that person is, what a low-level grunt he is, and who's very, very sick and can't cure himself of anything, but this technology is curing everybody, which is illegal to state in general and not legal in America to state medical things. And he came out on a talk show and actually did that, sponsored by other criminals that were on there. So the point is he's a criminal. And of course, he has a history of working for the government. What a surprise. But as sick as a dog on every level. And it's just kind of comical. So Ruth Drown certainly had some good ideas. Another one, you start with Abrams, he lights the match, somebody else feeds the flame of the match, and it goes on. Now, does anybody they're all pieces of the pie, and they're fascinating. It's fascinating that this is a way of proving how powerful human consciousness is. And of course, that's not the only story, because we know that now, and we have tools to use human consciousness to focus it. The point is that, like everything that is human being based, it's extremely weak. I mean, the average person isn't even stronger than the average small-sized dog. Anybody who's tried to wrestle an animal, or even a fairly big-sized dog, knows how powerful they are compared to your weakness. So the point is we have to go past this basic consciousness and use machines to empower us to a greater level. For several reasons, all of the problems we have now are much more intense than they were in the past. So you need greater energies to overcome the highly toxic environment that we live in, plain and simple. So Delaware, of course, the transfer over to Christopher Hills, he did build a few little machines, but it was never a big thing he got into building or even publicizing it. After his death, his organization was really lost, and while they continued to make some well-made tools, they were all very simplistic and didn't do much. I've owned all of Christopher Hill's boards and tools, and none of them really did much of anything. He was a big dowser and everything else that goes with that. So it's comical to think that anybody had a great answer, but they're tools, they're stepping stones. They're not supposed to be the answer unless they're so egotistical to tell you that. So as we go through there and we move into different areas, people have been making machines based for medical radionics for many years. There were several manufacturers in the United States, and of course Bruce Copen was very active until his death, selling machines in the United States and around the world. And of course there were a few American manufacturers, people like Lord Industries and other people that made machines, but they were pretty popular at their time and had a large catalog of what are called radionic type instruments until they went out of business as well. There never was that great of a following. And I believe there were some personal problems within Lord Industries, and they could no longer continue to make things. But, they don't make things because there isn't enough people really going there that you can make a decent living. So these are all the problems. They made some fairly good equipment. I'm going to be selling one of their 6 dials here soon that I obtained. Again, I used all these equipment personally. I've opened them up. I've looked at the circuitry. I'm the only one on the planet to ever do that. Remember that. No one else has ever done that to any great extent. I've opened up, 30, 40 machines going back probably 100 years to the 1920 machines from Abrams into Ruth Drown's, etc. So all of these things are very, very much part of the understanding of why I'm an expert in this field and nobody else is. So all these people had their effect. I mean, the biggest effect was by De La Warr, where there's so many of his machines out there, and why so many people wanted to use them. And I don't know what they were selling for back then or not, but you can find a couple of them. I have a few De La Warr units that I will be selling as well soon for those that want it. But, as I've shown his unit online, and again, you can find this on this channel for free, there is nothing in these machines. And of course, De La Warr stated that. Now, after that, there's really been no breakthroughs in radionics. All the machines have been made the same since the 1920s. Basically, a non-powered unit. There's no electromagnetism or electricity going through them, feeding into this psychic amplifying circuit is what you can call it. After that, nothing really happened. All of them are built the same. Copeland, who tried to make his machines look really fancy so he could charge $20,000 for them and sell them to doctors and everything else as this medical instrument, basically. All his circuits were non-electric, the main tuning circuits. He did add other electric things in there, all sorts of little things to make his units look special, including I had a unit of his that was one dial, which it had a electric light on it, and that's where the electricity went to. The electricity, you plugged it in, and you turned the switch on, and the light came on. So this was just, again, a psychic crutch. And pretty much that sums up all of Copeland's machines, even though they are built very well and look attractive and have so many dials on them. But that's the point. The point is, if you're a doctor, you need something that is going to impress you. Basically, a big box of junk with 50 dials on it is going to impress you. These machines, like everybody else, never really did anything, and it's the same old factor. Whatever these machines achieve comes from your psychic projection, your thought form, your intention that is slightly amplified. And a lot of people don't understand what I just said. As I said, look at the guts of these machines, and you will see actually what's in them. It's just the reality of that. And it's still, with all this, of the many years that I have researched this, the 40 years in this, it took me a long time to really break away that there wasn't something about this. This happens with most strong beliefs you have in life. I mean, one of the most difficult things that anybody can do is to reject the common religions in your society. Everything since birth to death is emphasized these comic book religions that have done absolutely nothing. But you have many billions of people that will fight to the death and kill you if you don't believe their way. So it's very difficult. And it took me a while to finally reject all this stuff and finally getting over the mental problem, the Mount Everest of blocks in front of your mind to get past all this stuff and move into real manifesting machines working on heightened energies and the actual mind and machine connection that can be made with real electronics. All of that, I've made the breakthroughs, and all these are coming out in a few months. Some of them have already been released, our new handheld units. All of these are real functioning amplifications and working with machine intelligence, which is a whole nother subject. So after that, really nothing came out. There's been a couple of things that have come out. Of course, even the Brits and their horrible organization over there has come out with a semi-electronic radionic machine, meaning it's a number, you punch numbers into it, and this supposedly does something. That's been around for a long time as well. But of course, the next development after that, and we're not going to jump into every little discovery or whatever people are doing, but the bottom line is that Hieronymus, Galen Hieronymus, who a lot of people like, basically took a Ruth Drown unit and took all the dials off and just put them into two dials of 0 to 100 to simplify the process. I think that's a good change, because too many dials also causes problems, even though you do lose a lot of psychic focusing. But the more dials you have, the more errors you make. He put that together and of some note and did some research. A lot of that is still unsure, and we don't really know what's going on with all of that stuff. But he stated that, of course, he named it eloptic energy, which, of course, even in itself, because is kind of a misnomer, but he understood that these were scalar energies that these machines were producing, non-electromagnetic energy fields, which are not unusual and been known to even common science for several hundred years, if not 1,000 years. I mean, this is the pyramids is a prime example. Pyramid energy is scalar energy. It's non-electromagnetic. So the whole idea is that we have to understand that, and that's the core to the universe. Everything comes from the scalar, and it is then it makes electromagnetism and all other energy. So we have to understand that's the mother of everything in the universe. So after that, what came were a few different units out there. Again, the computerization, and this, of course, was fraudulently picked up by an organization that claimed to be representing the industry to some extent, and all they did was push this junk machine called the SE5, which is nothing but a box of wires. Had a tiny little sharp computer on the outside so you could see little numbers, and it had nothing but little chips and other things in it. The original SE5, of course, they were using electromagnetic coils and other things. That entire technology is a garbage technology and is pushed by, as I said, an organization for years that pushed it. And a lot of people think that's something special when it's never been proven to do anything. And they, of course, publish nothing and, of course, do nothing, as usual. Now, after the SE5 has been out there for probably 30 years now, what came up after that, and there really isn't too many breakthroughs, was starting to add something into this pathetic circuit. And that what being added into was something called orgonite, produced by the well-known Satanist Karl Hans Wells, which is a very toxic left-hand spinning energy that was put in a bunch of machines. He started this whole orgone, which is a really crappy energy that does really nothing. I mean, Wilhelm Reich has stated that his energies really did nothing. He treated cancer patients and every one of them died. Wilhelm Reich was harassed because he was a sexual deviant to a degree. He was basically stating that everything in life was because of suppressed sexuality and everybody basically should go out and express themselves sexually. He was a chain smoker. He screwed all of his patients, and it goes on and on with that technology. Now, I think orgone is interesting, and particularly the cloudbuster, but there's a lot of research that has to be done, and the foremost expert in orgone recently died of cancer. So I can tell you that obviously it didn't work for cancer, and we know it not from the gossip of his persecution and ultimate death at a young age, is that we've seen that with the recent researchers who died of cancer. Obviously, living next to and working with orgone energy didn't keep this guy healthy, wealthy, or wise. So the bottom line is that the only thing he's ever been able to do with that was some cloudbuster experiments that seem very interesting. We certainly should look into cloudbusters. We need to be able to move rain to areas, and if we could do that, we could stabilize our society much better. So there certainly is something there. Wilhelm Reich discovered bions, and these bions apparently can be scientifically seen, and you can see the glow of the energy, etc. How much of this is really true, I don't really know, but it's an area shrouded, and those people are very uncredible as well. They never came out against the crap orgone that is being pushed on society. They're all part of the problem, and I wouldn't trust anything coming out of their organization. And of course, as we said, we have proof of its power. It didn't work, plain and simple. Well, this is the end of part 2, and we'll pick it up in part 3.